Hello and welcome to Artifacts, a show that talks about the arts in Minneapolis. We've got an exciting show coming up with some good discussion. One of the topics in today's show is going to be public art. We have an increasing amount of public art that's showing up in Minneapolis. The artist community and the city of Minneapolis are interested in pursuing this, and yet there are some questions that we have to explore about where we're going with that, what it means. So we'll be back with a couple of guests in just a second. Art and art in public places, to the initiated, are perhaps two different things. We have privately commissioned art that shows up in places that the public can sometimes get to, but also the city is getting involved with commissioning and placing art that is done by local and national artists and appearing increasingly in public places. And that raises some issues that we need to talk about. With us today are Linda Mack, columnist with the Star Tribune, talks about architecture and urban design questions, and an artist, Philip Larson, who's active here in the community and I believe has placed art around the country. So we're going to begin talking with these folks. As I mentioned, we've got more and more public art coming about here in Minneapolis. There's art being placed at the Minneapolis Sculpture Garden. We've got art over at the university that's increasingly being programmed. There are pieces that the Arts Commission has put in downtown and increasingly in the neighborhoods. And of course, something that's really on a lot of people's mind is the Nicollet Mall and what that's going to look like, both in terms of a mall and the improvements there, but also in terms of the public art program. And I wondered if either of you had any thoughts about what's going on there, what the future looks like with public art there. Philip, I know you're involved. You're going to be doing some work there throughout the year 1991. Can we maybe start with that and then tell us what you think that program is going to look like?
Well, the Nicollet Mall is going to end up being a kind of art spine connecting the parameters of the city, maybe giving us a sense of direction and centeredness that the town has never had before. Some things were there before that, to me, count as art, or should be counted as art. One is the multifarious pedestrian walkway systems that we have throughout our downtown area, the best of which I think our architect designed. As those coming out from the IDS Center, Lincoln Center, and other places. I think that one of the jobs now of an artist is not simply to drop ornaments upon sites, but to hopefully direct a design process that adds functional amenities as well as glistening and irrelevant objects. So anyway, 9 bus shelters have been given to me to decorate. And these octagonal transparent gazebos I'm treating just like that. This will be a history of Minneapolis design in etched glass, beginning with a Ojibwe wigwam-Sioux teepee going through our own Purcell and Elmsley Prairie School, pergola in the center of the mall, and at the end ending up with quintessential Minnesota, a deconstructivist ice fishing house with loons and muskies to give it some local flavor.
Is that on the south end or the north end?
Well, I haven't decided yet. On the north end maybe, or northwest, so it's kind of struck with snow up the banks.
Now, the folks that asked you to do this, did they know what you were going to be doing, or did you, how did you get involved with the specific topics and themes that you chose?
There was ostensibly a national competition. I was unaware of it until they called me and said that I had the job. And
well, congratulations.
I've then submitted a program. They haven't approved it, but I'll see to that.
You were selected as an artist, not on the basis of your design.
No.
Right, and then you came up
but
with
on the
ideas
basis of
later.
other glass projects, which included 5 elevator lobby murals for Arthur Anderson and Company in the downtown area.
But they knew in advance they wanted you to do the glass on the bus shelters.
Right.
That was the assignment.
Right. Okay, now what interests me about this project is that it is not a piece of art that descends from the sky and is put as something to trip people. But it is, in fact, a traditional discipline called architectural ornament. And I think this is a very important area where artists and designers and architects can work together to bring about a cohesive, useful statement.
Now, I'm assuming when you say that, your interest would be that this happened more at the front end of a design.
It would have been nice if I had something to do with the bus shelters design. It would be even nicer if a other artists, perhaps, and myself as well, would design a shelter that would be seen, perhaps undecorated, throughout the city as a replacement for the peaked shoeboxes that are now falling apart in neighborhoods.
Okay, well, that leads to a question I want to ask both of you. What do you think about what's out there now? And we do, as I mentioned, we have some public art there's some along the mall and around some of the buildings, there's some on Hennepin and some in the neighborhoods. And I don't mean to critique piece by piece, but what do you think of the program and the city's approach? How are artists feeling about getting involved? I mean, are they getting involved at the right time in this, or is there a different way we could put our stamp on it and better connected with the urban fabric?
What's the result so
Well,
far?
Yeah.
It seems
How does
that
it feel?
we're in our infancy as far as this is concerned in Minneapolis. The sculpture garden is a terrific piece of public art in itself, but I think that what we think of as public art is, as you're talking about it, is more art that is in people's everyday environment and that they encounter as a result of that. It's not someplace that they go to see art specifically. At least that's
How about
the
some
distinction I
examples?
make.
Places that they are already, bus shelters,
Well,
skyways?
There aren't bus shelters. There are the bus benches, which I know Philip has an opinion about. And that's you see them, from about the Hennepin Technical Institute down toward the river on Hennepin. There are a variety, which were done through an arts commission competition, I believe. And that enlivens the environment. That's something. But there isn't kind of a sense of integration or continuity. And you had an idea, which sounded good to me, about the Minneapolis bench.
Right, wouldn't it be
That's right.
nice if we had a competition for the Minneapolis bench, something that would be mass-produced in, say, 500 or 1,000, would make it economical, indestructible, and would identify the city. I don't know if it has a big M on it. I don't know if it's an abstraction of the Mississippi River that people can sit on without being permanently corrugated themselves, but it would identify the city. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a city light fixture? A standard fixture that would be throughout the town. Now, on the mall, we have a somewhat composite-looking lantern torchère device, kind of three-light system that's there now. It'll be interesting to see if people find these as successful, as memorable, as even romantic. If they're popular, maybe they should be redesigned, simplified, and used throughout the city.
Okay.
The Nicollet Mall seems like a real lost opportunity for public art, even though the public art program that's being instituted this year is quite ambitious and includes some exciting possibilities. Even beyond Phillips, there are going to be a couple of water sculptures, one that's year-round that's done by the kind of foremost ice sculpture in the world, evidently. And each of the pieces seems that it will be a nice, interesting contribution to the mall. But why weren't artists brought in to the design team at BRW so that they could actually bring their different way of looking at things to the design of things like the bus shelters, the lights, the whole design of the mall in itself?
And as an artist, that's the point you would have liked to have been involved, preferably, in the design team? Is that?
It would have been nice if the various artists now selected for bus shelter ornamentation, fountains, benches, inlaid mosaic work would have been brought to bear so that we could come out with a rather more unified program, or else the public will still think that art is an extravagant irrelevance, a small dot of eccentric reflectivity, and not anything more than a kind of amusing object. That's why it's not just the mall that interests me, it's going to be the numerous walkway systems that will be introduced into the city, perhaps as many as, 20 of them coming up in the next 20 years, at least more than one apiece. If there were a design review committee upon which artists would sit, we could make sure that these highly visible obstructions to ordinary vistas, views down an avenue, are visually noteworthy.
So pedestrian skyways, bridges, I take it, over roads and highways.
Sure.
This fits in with what you're talking about, is that sort of urban context that as the citizen walks down the road or into the buildings. In your opinion, Linda, architecturally, or as the pedestrian meets the built environment, if I can use the phrase, I mean, in your sense, what's working, or where could we go that would be exciting, that would put an identifiable Minneapolis stamp on it? I mean, are there themes, are there issues, are there materials that we could be doing, using better to have somebody who's new to the area say, this is Minneapolis, I understand by the materials you're using? Is there a sensibility we could be?
That's a lofty goal. I think it would be great if people who came to Minneapolis could just find their way around, both through the skyways and between the skyways and the street level. If you've tried to walk through downtown with a child or a stroller and get through some of the doorways, they don't even open. You know, they're so heavy, or they don't stay open. I guess it seems like we should strive for functionality first, and then beyond that, hopefully interest and excitement too. But
is there perhaps a place to blend? I mean, could the artists and the designers be working on some of those functional levels as well? Cueing people through direction or
well, that's a
and
thought.
imagery?
I mean, our skyway system, the graphic system, I think is quite inadequate. And so that could be a fun addition to the city. Would be.
I understand there's a Skyway signage committee meeting now to redesign this sort of thing.
They are going to again?
This is what I hear, yes.
Well, they need to. They needed to right away, unfortunately. Yeah, I think we're pretty conservative about taking risks and maybe doing something a little bit different. And I think that when you do something a little bit different that's fun, you capture people's imagination, and then they want to come. You know, they want to come back and see it and
Can you,
experience
either
it.
of you, think of any places where some of that's happening now? You mentioned in an earlier conversation I think it was at the phone booths or whatever in Australia or...
Oh yes, the famous red-painted iron phone booths in every British outpost of the world. You know where you are when you're in one of those booths. I think that the mall was an opportunity to introduce a theme. If they would have asked me for a theme, I would say this is going to be a Minnesota granite sampler, because this is one of the granite centers of the world. We produce more than 6 different species that go out from the state, and there's going to be granite there anyway. Why not advertise this as a Minnesota product, and feature then the varieties of the various flavors of this, like an assortment of lifesavers, one color a block. It's not going to happen. The granite that's there is not identifiably anything. It was a lost opportunity because there was no artistic context to begin with. There was simply a functional one. But they should work together, but they have to work together right from the very start.
We've only got a couple minutes left to talk today. I wanted to ask each of you what's coming up. What are the issues that you're dealing with? Linda, I know you look at what's going on in the city. I mean, you've talked early on about individual buildings that are going up, or districts, or indeed the mall. Is there an issue that you're really keeping your eyes on in 1991?
Well, I don't know that anything's going to happen that quickly, but I guess my optimism resides in the riverfront area. I think there's a great opportunity there to pull out what history is left in downtown Minneapolis and kind of make it physically evident. And that could happen through art as well as through interpretive trails and just kind of ordinary historical interpretation. One difficulty with this is that the park board is very involved in the riverfront area, owning a lot of land there. The park board has been very conservative about any kind of public art in the parks, because usually contemporary art means controversy, and they don't want to impose controversy on themselves, and they don't want to kind of impose uneasy feelings in people who want to just experience trees and grass and so forth. But I think there's a real opportunity there to use art to help people identify where they're going and to relate to what's been there before, kind of become evocative of the past.
Of course, that does end really at essentially the end of the Nicollet Mall. Philip, what are you involved in? What are some of the big projects you're working on besides the glass for the shelters on the Nicollet Mall?
Well, I'm just waiting for that phone call from the Minneapolis Park Board to ask them what I would do along the river, and the first thing I would do would be to use that inferior, crumbly, but wonderfully sensuous Mississippi River gray limestone for curbs, for bench supports, for retaining walls when necessary, because this is the stuff that's already visible in our old mills and in the reconstructed turn-of-the-century structures. Use it again. Bring it together. After 50 years of weathering, it will look as if it were part of an original planned package. Aside from that, I've just finished a walkway bench system north of General Mills International Headquarters in Golden Valley, based on the head of the Medusa, a classical image involving snakes. This various snake images are paths going to sculpture sites, wildflower gardens, parking lots, employee entryways, and upon located along its strategic intervals are benches like this, which have a snake imagery in it. Here I was lucky to get both jobs. I got the pathway and I got the furniture on top of them. So what's lacking, I think, in the Nicollet Mall system is that same kind of integration. It doesn't mean that one person has to do it, but it means that there needs to be an upfront artistic, material, functional concept. And architects generally don't think about materials. Designers don't either. I'm a sculptor. That's the first thing I think about is what is it made out of? They think about cost and about function. That's why you need a committee. But the artistic concept has to be there from the very beginning.
Thanks, Philip. Thanks for joining us on Artifacts. Linda, thanks very
Thank you.
much.
Welcome.
Glad you were here.
Fun to be here.
And we'll be back in a moment with another guest on a different segment. Thank you very much.
Welcome to Hennepin Avenue in a wonderful new addition. I'm going to back up a little bit so you can see this fabulous, fabulous bus bench. Can we call it a bus bench? Or a place for people to sit down and really enjoy themselves on Hennepin Avenue.
You sat on that and it was cold. I don't think your body temperature would do anything to that.
It still makes me think of summer.
Does it?
Yeah, I really like it. I like the fish. It was about 2 weeks that I walked by Nelson and I looked at it and I thought, oh my gosh, that's a fish.
I think it's great. I think it's excellent. This is a good area for it as well because you get such a cross-section of people. I'm an artist myself, and I appreciate that.
I think they serve a purpose. I do think that they have some appeal from the artistic standpoint.
It's going to be one of the more impressive things the city still can do. It's to liven its city up with art that I can use.
What do I think about this when I look at it? Picasso, maybe? I don't know. It's bizarre. It's very bizarre.
Kind of breaks up the monotony of having to sit on a regular bench.
No, I think the ones we have are just fine.
I think of ugliness when I look at it.
People don't think all the bus benches are beautiful. Art doesn't necessarily have to be beautiful. It's helpful if it is. But beauty is, there's a wide range of what constitutes beauty. And I'm not going to get into the aesthetics of beauty. What I'm more interested in is the idea of the variety of the bus benches. That as a project, you know, like many other public art projects, should be able to engage a wide variety of people on a wide variety of levels. We're not interested in simply saying, this is the only kind of object, but in saying, look here, look here, look here. All of these things have the possibility of being perceived as beautiful. They may not be perceived as beautiful by everyone.
The idea of putting around the downtown area some really interesting, I suppose I'd call them sculptures or designs, is really going to make the downtown pedestrian environment a lot more fun, a lot more interesting. And so I'm hoping that through this public art that we will really make a much more interesting place for people to kind of walk around and look at the city.
Again, the art community is a part of the community. The art community is again, just a player in the game. And you have to have lots of players in order to make it work.
Just seen a very few of the events and activities in the arts that will happen in Minneapolis in February. Obviously, there are dozens of things that go on locally in the arts, and it's our interest just to give you a sampler, as it were. If you're interested in letting us know about upcoming events, please let us know in care of the Minneapolis Arts Commission. You can give a call to 673-3006. We'll repeat that number later. And now, in the second part of today's show, it's my real pleasure to introduce my next guest, and that is Irene Gomez-Bethke, who is the Executive Director of Instituto de Arte y Cultura. It's really nice to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I wondered if you could just start by explaining what Instituto is, a little bit of its history and what it serves and who it serves.
Well, I'm very happy to do that. Actually, Instituto de Arte y Cultura is an Hispanic nonprofit arts organization that was incorporated in 1979. And we became incorporated because we were an ad hoc committee that were a group of people that were involved in doing productions, trying to get gallery space, etc. And completely volunteer. And what we found was a difficulty in trying to get our programs with all volunteer work. You know, sometimes you're meeting here and then sometimes your notes are lost or whatever. And so because we weren't having that, we decided to become incorporated. And so the mission of the organization is to promote and present the Hispanic culture through the fine arts, the cultural arts, the performing arts, and the media.
Well, I'm familiar with some of the programs because I've attended a number of them over the last few years. What do you have that's coming up? What kinds of
Well, we have
art
a
activities?
number of activities that last year, for instance, we did 27 major events, and not only in Minneapolis and St. Paul, but greater Minnesota and including South Dakota. But locally, one of the things we're very excited about is a March 1st gallery opening at the International Market Square with Ramon Moreno, who is a photographer, and we're celebrating 150 years of the discovery of photography. Ramon is a very interesting person. He's had quite a, how shall I say, a range of locales to choose from. I believe he studied in the Art Institute at Fort Lauderdale and in Mesa Community College in Mesa, Arizona, and locally at the Minneapolis Institute of the Minneapolis Institute, I believe.
So he's a photographer.
Yes, he's an artist, but his specialty is photography.
Okay, now I understand that Instituto exhibits obviously not only photography, but you work with dancers, you work with singers and musicians. What are some of the other programs or organizations maybe that you've helped serve, and what are they doing these days?
That's something we're very proud of. We're also a clearinghouse of artists, so we have been helping artists with in a number of areas. For instance, one that comes to mind is Olga Matamoros, who is an artist from Colombia, and we helped get exhibits for her throughout the Twin Cities. We had one at Pillsbury House during Hispanic Heritage Month, and so those are the kind of things that we do. But also, our latest one was working with, it was a collaboration with Gitanos del Norte, where we presented flamenco music and dance, both in Minneapolis and St. Paul, in 2 high schools, and then at the Great North American History Theater, which is in the Science Museum. And that was a great success.
Well, and it sounds then like working with young people in the educational settings is really important. Do you work with young people in the dance companies and the music?
Oh, yes, absolutely. In fact, in El Ballet Mexicano, which is one of the programs of Instituto, we have a very young component that is in the middle school bracket, and they are as professional as the older performing members. And in fact, we have a program that they will be doing a collaboration February 17th with the Ethnic Dance Theater at the Landmark Center.
And that's in St. Paul?
That's in St. Paul, yes, that's right. And it's funded as is our photography exhibit by Compass, which is funded by the McKnight Foundation and the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul.
Okay, so it's a joint venture in
Yes,
that
it
sense,
is.
a collaboration. Okay,
Yes,
we only
it
have a
is.
couple more minutes, and I wanted to get into some, if you will, questions about how it is. You mentioned some of the organizational difficulties way back when you started. How is it in this community for the Hispanic arts to survive? I mean, what are the major hurdles or problems you have to deal with?
We do have some very specific ones. Sometimes funders look at the artists and say, for instance, El Ballet Mexicano, when we have presented proposals to some of the funders, they say, well, we can't fund them because they're not a professional dance troupe. And yet they've been in existence since 1981. And I think this is true of most Hispanic artists, is that they can't do their art on a full-time basis because for them it's a survival issue. So they do it after their regular working hours, and yet the quality of their art, I think you can, compare them with any quote-unquote professional group. But I think this is true also of other minority artists, that it's difficult for them to just live by their art alone. So that's one of the barriers. The other one is that I think it's access. They really have a difficulty in accessing the system.
And in large part, that's what Instituto exists to help with.
Yes, we're kind of like a conduit for them. We help them develop resumes and to even catalog some of their work. They don't always understand the need for doing this. And so it's basic services like that that we can provide for artists.
Well, I'm glad you're there, and I continue to applaud your efforts and look forward to more of the programs, including Ramon Moreno's exhibit at International Market Square.
Right, March 1st.
March 1st, okay.
And we look forward to having you there.
Okay, thank you very much, Irene.
Thank you for
nice
having
to have
me.
you here.
Appreciate
Thanks very
that.
much. And if you'd like to send information or ideas for future shows to Artifacts, please do so in care of the Minneapolis Arts Commission. The number there, if you want to call in, is 673-3006. And we'll look forward to seeing you again in another month with another show of Artifacts. I'm Phill Lindsay.